Welcome to this month's ABC UTC Monthly Webinar. My name is Mary Lou Rawls-Newman. I'm Director of Technology Transfer at the ABC UTC and will be moderating today's webinar. I'll be assisted by Ali Javed, PhD student at FIU, who is managing the web room. Atord Azizi Namini, Director of the ABC UTC, sends his regrets for not being able to be with us today. As Atord has mentioned in recent news presentations, the U.S. DOT funding for the new FIU-led IBT ABC UTC will begin October 1st of this year. It's been my pleasure to coordinate the ABC UTC monthly webinars for the past decade. Long time. I'll be changing roles for the new IBT ABC UTC to be able to spend more time adding projects to the ABC project database, as bridge owners have repeatedly expressed the benefits of having more ABC project examples. I look forward to working with you in that effort. I'm pleased to introduce Kathy Crowell, formerly with the New Mexico Department of Transportation, who will be coordinating the monthly webinars for the IBT ABC UTC beginning in October. Please welcome Kathy to say a few words. Kathy?
Thank you, Mary Lou. It's truly been an honor and a privilege to be joining the UTC. I'm really looking forward to working with Atorad and his really all-star team. It's going to be great people to work with. And I want to really thank Mary Lou. I can't thank you enough for the work that you've done on establishing this solid framework for the Technology Transfer Committee. Many of you have been watching these webinars with me for the last decade, and it's been a great benefit to so many of us. So thank you again, Mary Lou. Today, I'm standing in for Torad. He actually had a travel conflict. So many of you who've been on the webinars for the past few months have noticed that he has been discussing the changes to the format of the ABC UTC and really introducing that the IBT, the Innovative Bridge Technology, is being added to the scope of the UTC. And in the coming months, the following webinars, he's actually going to be further discussing this changes to the format and to the addition to the breadth of the scope. So as you can see from many of the photos on this slide, there are some exciting topics coming up on the horizon. So in order for us to keep these webinars vital and beneficial to you, we need feedback on what it is that you'd like to see on the future webinars. So if your state or organization has been implementing IBTs that could benefit others, please let us know so that we can disseminate that knowledge. And also, if you have ideas for future topics that you'd like to hear about, also let us know those and forward them to Atorad at the email address on the screen. We really do benefit from getting those ideas from you. So please do send those if you have them. I'm excited to learn about those advancements and also to share them with you through these webinars and also through other communications, such as the research webinars and the conferences. So I look forward to working with all of you, but now I'll turn it back over to Mary Lou. Thank you.
Our presentation today features the Texas Department of Transportation's prioritization efforts for ABC. We're pleased to welcome our presenters, Graham Bettis, State Bridge Engineer and Director of the Bridge Division at the Texas Department of Transportation, and Bernie Carrasco, Bridge Management Section Director in the Bridge Division at TxDOT. Also, we'd like to introduce our Q&A session moderators, Paul Lyles, formerly Georgia State Bridge Engineer, and Jamal Elkaizi, Structural Engineer with the Federal Highway Administration, both members of our ABC UTC Advisory Committee. We'll now begin the featured presentation. Graham?
All right, thanks, Mary Lou. It's been 8 months since we were talking about this, and you wanted me to come do this, so glad that day has finally arrived. This is a great topic of discussion at the ABC conference, December in Miami. So we wanted to get a few things done before we agreed to give this presentation, and I don't want to ruin anything for Bernie, but we have largely reached the finish line on some things we were going for, and really that's what we'll be focusing on today. So really, I just have some opening comments for the most part. Bernie's going to really get into the meat of this, but just to kind of open the topic about what we're going over and what we're trying to accomplish in Texas is, the owners get really excited about breaking ground, right? Because so much work goes into getting a project ready, and we spend so much time with the utilities and the environmental and the design and everything else. So when we finally get to breaking ground, that's kind of a celebration for us. The public doesn't care. The public doesn't care about breaking ground. They care about cutting ribbons. And so we've really tried to find ways to get to that ribbon cutting, even on standard bridges, a whole lot faster than we have in the past. So, what are we trying to do? We're trying to avoid, or at least minimize the orange barrels. I found that image there on the right when I Googled it, and that's what the public thinks of our projects typically, right? So the orange barrels are a reality, no way around them, but we can try to minimize the time that they're out there. So we've been talking ABC for a long time now, over a decade, and I think in that time we've got a lot of momentum. There's been a lot of progress. We're doing it more often, but I think there's still a need for wider adoption, especially on more standard projects. So we're not going to be talking a whole lot today about the lateral slide-ins and some of these other really big stuff. Bernie will touch on some of it, but really our focus has been on how do we accelerate pretty standard bridges, and that's been a lot of what our efforts have gone into, and really even beyond our efforts, what we're trying to make policy in Texas. So the ABCs of ABC. What are we talking about here? Speed, obviously, it's accelerated bridge construction, so that's first and foremost, right? We're trying to speed things up. But I think a couple of things that we maybe don't talk about as often as we should when it comes to ABC is quality. And TxDOT relies very heavily on prefabricated elements, whether it's precast concrete or structural steel or whatever other widget we can make in a plant environment. We really have maximized how much we do that, and we've got just really exceptional oversight and quality control in those plants, and the quality is great. Something goes wrong in the field with a cast in place application, something like that, it's really hard to come back, and we're forced to take something that maybe isn't as good as we hoped. Whereas in a plant produced girder, whatever it is, something goes wrong, we can scrap it and start over. And then that third topic, this is definitely one I don't think we talk about often enough, and it's safety. And everybody knows what happened with COVID. Everybody decided they were a NASCAR driver. They're driving way too fast. And just because COVID is over, that's one of those bad habits that stuck around. People are driving like maniacs out there, and that includes our construction zones. So I think it's putting the public in harm's way, and it is most certainly putting the contractors and the inspectors in harm's way. So I think really ABC should be looked at as an opportunity to minimize the amount of time those guys are exposed to traffic. So I think that's a huge part of ABC, and we just don't talk about that aspect maybe as often as we should. So really trying to rethink ABC. And again, when I think a lot of people hear ABC and they're automatically thinking these really big, exciting projects like Utah has done a number of them, and some really cool stuff out there. We're taking it in a little bit more of a more boring level, and really looking at ABC for standard construction. And you can see the photo there on the right. Certainly that's a months-long project, but is there a reason that we can't look at ABC techniques? And you see the precast cap going in place there. That shaved a lot of time off that project. So I don't think it has to be a weekend closure to qualify as ABC. At least that's how we look at it in Texas. So there again, that second bullet, lots of opportunities to accelerate projects that are more standard. Terrific progress has been made on developing standards on prefabricated elements all over the country, and we're at a point now where we can really design and construct bridges from the ground up using Lego pieces, whatever you want to call them. We've got precast columns design standards underway, and we'll have those published, and at that point pretty much the whole bridge can be designed, standard bridge, routinely designed and constructed using almost all prefabricated elements. Primarily in Texas, that's precast. So keeping it simple. Prime contractors in Texas have been very clear with us. Keep it simple. Understandably, with ABC, especially on those weekend closures or big projects like that, there's going to be some unusual stuff you have to do. But every opportunity we have to keep things simple, that's what we do. So even for accelerated construction, we utilize as many standard details and techniques as possible. We try not to get cute unless we just really have to. Something else we do is put alternates in plans, and so we'll design a bridge 2 or even 3 ways and tell a contractor we don't care which one you do, bid it and make your decision. Another thing we do is we have alternates, and we allow contractors to come to us with their ideas. So we really don't want to paint ourselves into a corner with these things. A lot of time contractors will have great ideas on how to speed things up, and we want to be open to that. All right, so flipping the script, and I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this because I think this is the bulk of what Bernie will be addressing, but it's interesting. I'm up in Portland, Maine this week for the TxDOT Committee on Maintenance meeting, and there were discussions this week about from a couple of states that still think of ABC as just hugely expensive, and they don't do it because of that. You know, we talked about the speeding with COVID. Something else that happened with COVID are the astronomical construction cost. The material costs are high, the labor costs are high, and the traffic control is just obscenely expensive. Just crazy what's happened with the traffic control cost. So when we do a side-by-side, we're frequently finding that ABC is comparable, or in some cases less expensive. Bernie's going to show you an example today where the ABC shaved millions of dollars off of one of our projects. That second bullet, a lot of planners, a lot of owners just remain steadfast in their belief that at least one lane of traffic must be maintained at any cost. And man, it's hard to move some people off of that position. And I've found it really interesting that there's a lot of cases where you reach out to the public, they seem to be more open to the idea of ABC sometimes than owners and planners. So I think the public outreach is critical. There have been several instances where even working internally with TxDOT districts, they were very resistant to the idea, but we did some public outreach and find out that most of the time the public is very much on board with the idea of just ripping off that Band-Aid. If you can hurt them for a couple of weeks a lot instead of hurting them a little bit for 2 years, most of the time they're willing to take that couple of weeks. So we're really working hard at TxDOT, Bernie and I and others in the bridge division. We've got support from our administration and from our construction division, really trying to change that mindset that ABC is not always more expensive, and we don't always have to maintain a lane of traffic. And we're making ABC the preferred option over phased or detoured approaches, and that's a new way of looking at things for us. So again, don't want to take too much of the content Bernie will be covering, but I'll stick around and look forward to some discussion and Q&A at the end, but I'll turn it over to Bernie.
Yeah, so as Graham just stated, I'm going to talk about what steps we're taking to prioritize ABC techniques in Texas. And yeah, he covered several of them, but you know, we're going to maybe go over them a little bit more in depth here. So a year ago, I think, or 8 months ago, as Graham just said, he mentioned using accelerated bridge construction instead of bridge phasing and instead of these temporary detours that we do. I would say that is definitely still the goal. I would love to get to a point where we are using ABC techniques to eliminate them altogether, but the truth of it is that we're probably just going to get to where we minimize bridge phasing and detours. We're trying hard to identify areas where it makes most sense to eliminate these temporary detours, eliminate the phase construction to where we can just close a bridge down completely, get our construction crews in there, have it closed, get in there with prefabricated elements and speed up construction as much as possible, but we're not there yet. So what you know, like Graham just touched on, and how many of us are aware already is that as many of us are aware is that, you know, these temporary detours can be very expensive. Here's one that we have very near here to Austin. This temporary detour is in place. It's extremely expensive. We've gone in there and have I should have done this a little beforehand. Let me get my laser pointer here. But we've come in here and essentially what we're doing is we wanted to keep traffic open during construction, right? We didn't want to, the stakeholders wanted to keep traffic open and not interrupt traffic as much as possible. So what we ended up having to do was create 2 bridge structures. We this is in there temporarily. We move all traffic over here during construction. We build the actual bridge next to it, and then what's going to happen later is that we're going to come in here and tear all this out. So we're essentially building 2 bridges, or what I say is almost bridges, plus all of these roadway elements. You know, we've got a lot of roadway elements that like transition traffic over onto that temporary detour, and that is in many times it can be very expensive. What's another thing that Graham just talked about was the safety concerns. You know, here we have a horizontal curve. We're introducing a horizontal curve just to get traffic off to the side and away from the construction. Well, the horizontal curve itself is a safety concern that we have. This was brought, you know, this is something that we've been kind of trying to communicate to our partners at our districts, and this is something that one of our districts is very concerned about, and it goes into their decision process very early in their projects. You know, they want to eliminate as many of these as possible. The other thing that they always point out to us is that by doing these phased construction or doing these temporary detours, we're adding the potential for right-of-way costs. That's adding a lot of risk to the district. They're having to build that into their project development. Is that, hey, look, if we have to phase this, it's gonna take a lot more time to acquire right-of-way, get those agreements in place, get the utilities cleared, make sure we get the utility agreements in place. It's just a lot more work if we have to do this additional right-of-way and this the additional right-of-way and these phased construction or the temporary detours. So the phased construction, that's another way that we try to maintain traffic on our bridges. It's not necessarily not what we want to do, but this also is a bigger footprint than, you know, just the regular bridge. Oftentimes we end up having to overbuild our bridges. We build the bridges much wider than we actually need at the end. That bigger footprint, you know, also affects how many utilities we might have to relocate. Like I just said, that, you know, that's a risk that our districts are having to consider, and it's something that they want to stay away from that as much as possible. But by going with ABC techniques, we can stay away from that. Graham mentioned the traffic control expense. Yes, the traffic control expense, you know, when we have these long detours and we have these phase construction where, you know, extends for thousands of feet on either side of the bridge, and you have barricades up for months on end, yeah, that traffic control is going to add up, and it's going to add up quickly. Like I said a minute ago, and we're also, not only that, but we're having to build these 2 separate structures. So here we have the original structure here. We're coming in with a second structure. Then we're going to come in and demolish this and then build that second structure. So we're having, you know, traffic control times 2 here. So that's something we're trying to eliminate in Texas as much as possible. So one of the other things that one of our districts brought up to me when I was doing some legwork to get this presentation together is that, you know, one concern that they have is the ride quality. They say they are afraid that there's going to be construction joints and that the ride quality won't be there for them when we finish the project. Now, I can say from the bridge standpoint, we have not necessarily seen that on these projects, but that's a concern that our districts have. So that's just something that we're definitely going to listen to them, and if it nudges them into the ABC realm even more, the better. You know, that's even better news for us. But, you know, on another thing on the safety end is that narrow lanes. When we're having to do these phased construction, sometimes we're having to break back our bridge deck, you know, put up a temporary rail like I'm showing here. Is that we have a temporary rail. We've broken back part of the existing bridge, and just to make room for that first phase of a construction. Well, we're narrowing the lanes. Now we're disrupting traffic. It's something they're not used to. We're making them go into these lanes that are narrower than what they're used to. We're maybe even affecting pedestrian traffic. There's a lot of safety concerns that are kind of hidden in the original part of the project development process. And I've already touched on the additional right-of-way and relocations, but that's a much bigger consideration in these metropolitan areas. Here we have a more urban area, metropolitan area, whereas out here, you know, it's something that can be easily done, or more easily done, I should say. So how do we get past that? We do ABC, right? You know, absolutely. That would be what we would love to do. And you know, what does that look like? You know, Graham just said, Everybody always thinks of these big projects where you just move in these big bridge elements, and that's just great. We would love to be able to do that. I would just say that it's not something that we do as often in Texas. And this is when people think about ABC, and we talk about ABC, even to our districts here in Texas. This is what first comes up to their mind is oh, we have to do these big bridge element moves. We're gonna have to do this coordination with the SPMTs and these big elements. We're gonna have to cross over our existing bridges, and it's just that's not necessarily what we owe or what we're trying to do, but this is the first image that people have in their minds. So this one's in Fort Worth. We did this in 2013, and this is a big success. It was a great project, and there was a lot of public interest in this one. A lot of people turned out to watch this. We have people flying drones out there trying to get pictures of this. So yes, people love this kind of stuff. This one, another one is, this is not in Texas, but this is what we often get as a first impression from all of our districts, and even some of our staff here. When we mention ABC, this is the first thing they think of, and we're trying to change that mentality. Like, hey, look, this is great, but this is not necessarily all we are wanting to do to accelerate construction in Texas. West Dallas Street in Houston. This is an example of one that we did back in 2016. We had a bridge get hit in downtown Houston. We had to close the bridge. It was so severely damaged. We had to close the bridge, and it ended up being that bridge was a major route that was going to be used by law enforcement and major other security people for the Super Bowl that was going to be held in Houston in February of 2017. So they kind of came to us, and I won't say a panic, but yeah, maybe it was a panic, but wanting us to, hey, TxDOT, is there a way that you can get this bridge repaired and opened up back to traffic before the Super Bowl is hosted here in Texas? And to the credit of the Houston district, they stepped up and worked with our office and worked with a lot of partners, actually. Our office, construction, the city, there's all sorts of people involved, our contractors, fabricators, to get this going. But one of the things we did is we did modular construction. We went in there, we removed over a course of a few weeks, we were able to remove the old structure, come in with these modular pieces, shut down the traffic underneath completely, and reroute to another major highway, and get this thing replaced in fairly quickly. I-635 up in Dallas in Seagoville Road. This bridge was another one that it was slated for replacement. There was a lot of issues with the bridge that we needed to address. This bridge was gonna be a big headache for everybody. This was another one that when we talk about ABC, these make an impression on people. So this is the first thing that they think about is these big modular bridges. They're great, absolutely they're great, and we're very proud of them. But and we want people to think about these, but that's not the only thing we want them to think about. For that bridge, construction time was originally we were estimating gonna be 20 months. That was going to be painful. Graham and a few other people from our office, saw that and said, hey, why are we doing this? And went up to talk to the district engineer, proposed the idea of a few weekends of closures and being able to, move this thing in quickly with some modular construction, and they were on board. We did a lot of outreach to the public, and the public was on board. It was great. But as I'm showing here in the slide, the construction time went from 20 months down to 2 weekend closures, and we were able to get the whole bridge replaced. Yeah, there was a little bit of legwork up front. We had to do some work on the substructure to prep it for the new superstructure. That's not included in the 2 weekend closures here, but I'm talking about how do we affect traffic? It went from 20 months of affecting traffic down to 2 weekends. The cost went down from 11 million to just around 6 million. How do we do that? That was the less phasing. The traffic control on this thing was just astronomical. It was 20 months of traffic control. It was lots of weaving in and out of different routes through there. there was a lot going on with that traffic control. It was a complex area. And then we also were able to cut out the temporary retaining walls. Those retaining walls we were just going to use like during construction. And then after we got done with the construction and had the new bridge in place, we were going to have to go in there and tear out those retaining walls. So we were able to eliminate that completely. The other thing is, yes, in full transparency here, we did have to cut the scope a little bit. We did have to, we didn't go back with the ultimate bridge that we wanted to go with, but hey, it worked out really well for us. And we just checked on this bridge a few weeks ago, and the bridge is looking great. We're gonna maybe do a little bit more preventive maintenance on it, but it's working great. Down in San Antonio, we had a lateral slide in Loop 345. This is another one. Everybody always thinks about the big moves, the big bridges that we just slide in and can get in and out on a weekend, which is great. We do want people to think about that, but it's not necessarily what we're going to be doing everywhere in Texas. Like I said, weekend or weeks long closures are great, but they're not as common in Texas. So what are we doing? How can we accelerate in Texas? In Texas, we prioritize accelerated bridge construction, and by any cost-effective method. And what do I mean by that? I'll get into that in just a minute. The big thing that we're going to do here in Texas is the upcoming policy. We're trying to figure out how can we get this on everybody's mind. How can we get this idea to be something that everybody's considering every time on every project. So we kind of put our money where our mouth was, and we're changing our policy. Now, it's an upcoming policy that's coming up. We just got sign off from reviewers. Our project development manual is going to have each project will have the districts will have to submit a written plan to Bridge Division comparing the time and cost of these projects, looking at a full closure versus phase construction versus temporary detours. Oftentimes, like Graham was saying, the default is, hey, we're going to do phase construction, or hey, we're going to do this temporary detour. And that's always the default, and then it's incumbent upon us to try to convince them, hey, let's consider a full closure. And we get a lot of pushback, but now we're saying, hey, look, that's what you have to do up front. That's what you have to do to get the project started. We can have that conversation then on whether or not that makes sense to do phase construction or do the temporary detours, but full closure has to be the consideration at the beginning. And it has to be considered at the time of the preliminary bridge layout. So this isn't something that we can do at 60% or 90% just as a checkbox. It's something that you have to do up front. So the full closures with ABC techniques to be the first consideration. And what are we talking about on that? So accelerated bridge construction. So what I'm showing here is precast. Graham was talking about it a minute ago. We get great quality from our precast elements. The more precast we can do, the better in Texas. That can help us speed up construction considerably. Here, I think almost every element in here in this slide is a precast element, except for maybe this column back here and that cap, and then this existing bridge. But everything else that we've got going on here is a precast element. So what does that mean? Like, in other words, we're going to be building with Legos. That is something that somebody said that in our office, and I was like, yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's like we're going to have these Lego pieces we can come out there and start building them. Somebody else used this slide a while back. I loved it. I think it's a bridge out in Germany somewhere. It's an artist rendition, but it's great. I thought yes, that's exactly the concept that we're wanting people to embrace and to think about. TxDOT has a very mature and a wide variety of bridge standards that we have. That's something that we pride ourselves on. That's something that we've had for years. And the standardization, that's something that our contractors have communicated to us, and something that we have heard them on, is that standardization, as much as we can standardize things, the better. That's easy for them to understand. That's something they know. They can bid on it. They know what they're getting into. So we heard them loud and clear, and we're trying to standardize it as much as possible. An example, or a few examples of what we have in our toolbox. Here we have the precast concrete deck panels. I'll point out that in Texas we do use these. These are partial depth. So here's the top of our precast concrete beam, and then here's our precast panels between the two between the bridge the beam lines. We come back in with a 4-inch mat on top, and these have worked out great. They've done a great job in Texas to speed up construction. Something else we have here is the pre-stressed beams. Something that's been around for years, but it's not necessarily an ABC technique that's, I think, recognized. But hey, it helps speed up construction. We can use these pre-stressed beams and then come back in here. And I'm showing we have two elements here. We have the pre-stressed beams and the PCPs here, the precast panels. Sorry, in Texas, I'm sure other states are the same way, but we speak in our letters, in abbreviations, PCPs and stuff like that. So I will try not to do that, but I may slip into that. So accelerating with standardization, here we have a bridge that was almost every single element on this bridge was a standard precast element that we had in our toolbox. We have the decked beams. It's a cast in place, no cast in place deck. We have these, they just drop in and they're ready to go. We do have a detail where we weld a little, we weld these together here and to tie them together, and then we come back in and we do pour a grout in there to fill in that gap. But for the most part, what you see here is we have a precast abutment, we have decked beams, deck slab beams, we have precast cap, and then steel piling. So on this one, we don't have any formwork that's going out in the field. We're prefabricating all these elements, trucking them in, and then we're building it quickly. This one was a landlocked bridge, so this was the only way in and out of the neighborhood that was there. We were able to, I think, get this done in less than 2 weeks. So I just mentioned those precast caps. So we have a standard. We have a precast cap standard for concrete columns, and we have a different one to be used with steel piling. And the one thing I'll say about it is that we do have a standard in every one of our projects. We include a standard for cast in place, but then every single one of our projects is sent out with a standard for these precast concrete caps, or in other states we call them piers. But that is the standards included in every single one of our projects. There may be some where we don't include it, but that's at the district discretion. But I would say 95% of our projects go out with a precast cap standard in place. Precast abutment details. We have used these. We've used them on several of our bridges now. We don't have an abutment standard that's precast yet, but I think that is something that we're working on. But yeah, we've used them, and I would love to see this become a standard. So one of the things that we've noticed in Texas is that we have to communicate these full closures. We want our districts to consider that as a first option. To reduce the phase and reduce the temporary detours, we want the full closure to be there. But the other thing is, all right, if we have it there and we're going to do that, let's be sure to communicate that. I've blown up the note here. We make it very clear to our contractors as bridge closed during construction, see traffic control plans for additional details. That way the contractor knows when they're bidding this project, they know, okay, I don't have to bid this as phase. I don't have to bid this as a temporary detour. I don't have to come up with that plan myself. TxDOT has done the legwork. We're closing this bridge all together. I can get my crew in and out of there and be done at my own pace. So what else? What else have we done? So one thing that we did here in Texas, we had an innovation committee. Our design section director a few years ago started up I think he called it the big challenge, the grand challenge, and it morphed into an innovation committee. In that, one of the ideas was to have these pre-topped girders. I think we heard this idea from another state and some at a seminar or something we went to, and they're like, hey, that's a great idea. Let's see if we can implement that in Texas. So somebody proposed the idea. We identified a project where we could do this, and we ran with it. Let's do it. So an example where we did it is in our Bryan district. We had in 2019 we had 3 bridge replacements. All 3 of them were rural. They were on what we call OSR, which is the Old San Antonio Road. Had long detours. There were long detours to go along with it. So we're trying to get in and out as fast as we could. in that project, we did cast a deck with the girders, and we did that off-site. So the idea was we had these pre-topped girders. We had a drop-in panel here, and then we came in with the closure pour. And then you'll see here is that we cast the rail with on the exterior section. So we cast this all as one piece, cast this part all with one piece, and then we came in here with these panels and then a closure pour. For that project, we picked the girders two at a time, and then we placed the drop-in panels. We cast that closure pour. We used rapid setting fiber reinforced concrete on this one. We gave the option of UHPC or this RSFRC. I think on this project we went with that RSFRC, and then we cast that rail in with this one. Here I'm just showing, like, after it's been placed, we see where we still need the closure pours. We came back, we used that rapid setting fiber reinforced concrete. And here's where we created a little matrix on, like, all right, UHPC versus that RSFRC. Try to compare what we had here. In this project, like I said, we went with that second option. Another project that we used that idea on was in Amarillo in 2020. We had 5 bridge replacements that we had. Also rural, long detours. For that one, we gave them 10 calendar days. Each bridge had to be done in 10 calendar days. We reached out to our contractors, got their input on this. Our idea was we'd go in there with those pre-top, what we call TX girders, the TX girders. You saw that big bulb at the bottom on that previous project. Well, on this one, the contractor came back and said, hey, what if we use these next beams? And we're like, okay, let's hear what you got. And so they proposed it. They showed us what their plan was, and we said, all right, well, it's very similar to what we had. It meets what we were wanting to do, so let's do it. So we were open to the idea. We're open to input from others, and we went with these next beams. So on that one, the concept is like Legos here. We have our precast caps, precast abutments, and now we have our precast superstructure. Like I said, we had them come in there and they only had 10 days on these. So they had to show that they're going to be able to do that. The UHPC closures, we had them show that they're going to be able to do the closure pours. So we had them do this. I think the requirement in the project was 60 days in advance. They had to do a batch trial of their UHPC and do their testing. And then I mentioned a minute ago, but look closely. These projects, we even had them cast in that rail. This one has the rail is just completely there. On this one, they were confident. This is the one in Bryan. So this is the TX girder. This is the one up in Amarillo, the next beams. They were confident they were going to be able to get in there and get out, be able to cast that rail in there in the 10 days. So, and they did. So good on them. So the pros and cons. So absolutely. The pros, we have quicker delivery of the final project. Overall, we have a lower impact to the traveling public and better control of our materials. This is something I think is something that maybe we'll try to focus on a little bit more on our end, is the better control of the materials. That, we're thinking about asset management. We're thinking about the long service lives that we're going to have. If we can control as much of the fabrication, control as much of the upfront quality of our products, the better. The cons is, yeah, it will involve a full closure, but hopefully we're getting people to think about that upfront with this new policy. Another con is in Texas, we do kind of have a little bit of contractor inexperience. There's not a whole lot of them that do the full closure, and so they're kind of not really sure about that. But I think once they see it, once it's communicated clearly, they're gonna be on board with it. And like I said earlier, as much as we can standardize it, the better for everybody. We absolutely recognize that this is not going to be suitable for every bridge. There's going to be some times where we have a bridge in a metropolitan area and we just can't close it. Then that's a case by case basis. We'll definitely consider that, and that's a conversation that we'll have with our districts. We're not going to be coming in and say every bridge must be ABC. It's just something that we want everybody to consider. And that goes along with the schedule pressures. In a metropolitan area, an urban area, there may be things outside of our control that we have to have this bridge open you know, for whatever reasons. And so we're definitely going to work with everybody on that. So back to what Graham was saying earlier, is the ABCs of ABC. Speed. We have to work with all of our partners. We can't just come in and say, hey, we're doing this every single time. But if we work with our partners, a lot of time we can get buy-in from them. Like here on Seagoville Road, that was something that it took a conversation from Graham and our district engineer, explaining what we had in mind, explaining what we were trying to do, and it was a quick conversation. We were able to get everybody on board with it, and we move forward with ABC on that one. So working with our partners is a big deal. The quality, I just mentioned that, the quality of our prefabricated elements, that's something I'm going to try to focus on that with our districts. And then the safety. It should be a part of the conversation more. We do have some buy-in from some of our districts. They do recognize some of the safety aspects. That's something that it's going to be maybe on our office, the Bridge Division office, to communicate that to districts more so, is that, hey, look, the traffic control, the narrow lanes, the horizontal curves, the disruption of traffic, the disruption of normal traffic, something that we need to speak to everybody about. That safety is a big thing in TxDOT. Now, I'm sure it is with every other state, is that, you know, safety is the number one concern. So if we can improve the safety of our projects, you know, I think we'll get more and more buy-in from others. And that is all that I have, Mary Lou. I guess at this point we open it up to questions, right?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Graham and Bernie, for sharing your ABC work with our participants today. There's some impressive work going on in Texas. Thanks for giving such a great presentation. Paul and Jamal will now moderate the Q&A session. Paul?
Okay, thank you, Mary Lou. And Graham and Bernie, very, very interesting and very impressive. We do have some questions that came in pre-webinar, and then we have a few that have come in so far, and we'll probably get some more that go on during the question and answers. So with that in mind, let's go into the ones, first of all, that came in before the webinar today. The first one is, can you comment on ABC project costs and quality management systems during the execution of the project?
Yeah, I think from a quality standpoint, with ABC, there tends to be more interest across the board. So I do think that there's additional inspection, there's additional oversight, and so I do think we get a better level of quality control than we do on a standard project. In terms of cost, it really varies a lot. And so I don't know how to answer that other than just saying it really is a project by project consideration on how much it's going to be. Just, I mean, are you in downtown Dallas, or are you up in the middle of nowhere outside of Amarillo? And then are you looking at a 3-day closure or a 10-day closure or a 2-month closure? So really not a standard way to look at that on cost, but on a quality, from a quality front, I think it's higher.
Okay, as you've been letting them, do you find you're getting a better handle on the costs?
Sort of. This is still fairly new to us, so I think we've got a good handle on what it costs for what we would call kind of a standard bridge that's being accelerated. But those bridges that Bernie showed today, those really pretty slick projects with the next beams in Amarillo, the old San Antonio Road, we just don't have enough of those under our belt yet to really have a good idea. So we take our best shot in the estimate, but we need to do a few more of these before we have I think a really good process in place for giving the cost.
Okay, we'll go on to our next question. This one says, this came in beforehand. Do you have assessment criteria to determine the benefits of ABC for a given location?
I think some of the states have developed actual tools where you're inputting data and it kind of spits out what the best options are. We haven't really gone that route. What we have, we've put together, we've got an accelerated bridge construction webpage, and I can send that link to everybody. And what it is, it provides guidance and kind of how to go about choosing which one is the best option. And then if you do choose to go with ABC, we've got some guidance on kind of what that looks like and what the next processes are. So we don't look at it as much of an input tool that spits out an answer. It's more of a, here's the information you need to decide, and we make that available to everybody. Bernie, anything to add?
No, I think you covered that pretty well. I think, with as we're moving to the precast elements, I think that's going to be more and more common, and it may just become more of a standard way that our projects are bid by our contractors, if we can move more to that standardization.
Okay. Another question that came in beforehand is, do you have column to precast cap beam connection details for, first of all, reinforced concrete columns, and second is for driven pipe piles used as columns?
Yes, we do. We have that. I think that is on our standard. I covered that in one of our slides, or I showed it on one of our slides. But yes, that is something that we have as a standard for both reinforced concrete and for the driven piles.
Okay. Another one that came in beforehand is, does TxDOT use the PCI bridge design guidelines?
We use the AASHTO guidelines, and then we've got some of our own tidbits in there. So we go with AASHTO design. Certainly we look at what PCI has. We're involved with PCI. Really, I think the answer is we start with AASHTO, and then we tweak it as needed.
Okay. The next one here, this came in beforehand. Has the TxDOT used box beams with precast decks on any projects?
We have not used the box beams with the full depth precast panels or the precast decks. We have not used that, but we do come in there with those deck slabs like I showed earlier. I don't know if you noticed on my slide, as there's a caveat, we don't use those on system bridges. So we use those for our off system, like low volume traffic. We don't use those on bridges where we expect there to be a high truck traffic percentage. But Graham, you have anything to add to that?
We do have standards for it, Paul, and this is kind of funny. This is one where we developed standards thinking it would be a little more popular than it's turned out to be. So yeah, we've got standards. They're ready to go. Just nobody's used it yet.
Okay. We'll go to some questions that came in during your presentation, and we're still getting questions coming in, so Jamal will be handling those in a little while. First of all, this one came in during your presentation. It says, are the precast cap and abutment cast on site or in a shop?
That's a good question. So there is a process that allows for them to cast it on site, but almost in all cases, those are cast in a precast yard. So we have very, very, very tight controls. We have very strict requirements over what has to happen for a contractor to be able to cast on site. So most of the time, we've got so many really, really top-notch precast fabricators in the state that it really isn't necessary very often to cast much of anything on site. So there is a mechanism in place that allows for it, but it's almost never utilized, and that's intentional.
Okay. In the precast Texas, like you said, it's really a big state. So you have the fabricators pretty well spread out where you don't have enormous haul distances, I guess.
We've got a bunch of them, yeah.
Okay. All right. Then the next question we have is, in projects with precast cap standard versus cast in place, do you know what percentage of contractors or projects use precast versus cast in place, as it actually comes out?
I would say that we don't have those numbers just yet. This is a relatively, I'll say still relatively new standard. I think that we're still trying to get people to get our contractors to buy in on it and to have confidence on that. But we don't have those numbers yet. But it is relatively low based on the number of bridges that we build across Texas. I think last year, I think we replaced 150 or so bridges, but we added 400 bridges to our inventory. But so relative to the total, it's a kind of a low number, but we are seeing it more. across Texas.
Okay. Probably if you went down and figured it out, and then in a few, 6 months, you'd have to figure out new numbers.
Yeah, Paul, I think if you ask us in a couple of years, the percentage will be a lot higher. I think the contractors are really starting to see the value in time savings.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next question we have here, this came in during the presentation, is the precast concrete panels used in Texas commonly a full depth panel with closure joint, or a partial depth deck panel with cast in place concrete poured over the top?
Almost all the time it's partial depth. So they're 4 inches. So 4 inches of the precast and then 4.5 inches of cast in place on top. We do occasionally do the full depth, but the vast majority of cases are these partial depths. And these are used almost 100% of the time. We don't require them. We allow either the stay in place precast panels or full depth cast in place, and none of the contractors are doing the cast in place anymore.
Okay. You have used some full depth deck panels occasionally, haven't you?
We have, and that's more of those kind of unique ABC projects like Bernie was describing, where there is a need to get out super fast, and so we do have a handful under our belt.
Okay. The next question here is, are there any significant amounts of repairs required for your precast units? And like maybe they damage them in handling or anything?
No, we really got this down to a science. We work very closely with our fabricators. We've got full-time staff in every one of our major precast producers. So the quality control that the plants themselves have put in place are just really pretty extraordinary. And they know that we are expecting, when we have a widget, when the expectation is that it arrives and get puts in place in basically perfect condition. So very rarely do we have any kind of significant repair that has to take place on our precast elements.
Okay. It's about a little after 2, and we have a number of questions that have come in after we started the question and answers. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jamal, and Jamal is going to pick up the questions that came in during the Q&A. Jamal?
Oh, thank you, Paul. A great presentation, Graham and Bernie. There's a few questions came in during the presentation. Like Paul said, the first question, you showed a precast slabs already attached to the girder. Do you require a wearing surface treatment applied to the top after the assembly?
So most of the time we include sufficient concrete cover, and that serves as the wearing surface. We really hate putting on an overlay or anything like that on our new bridges. So what we've done is up the concrete cover in our precast elements and cast in place, and that serves as, if you want to call that a wearing surface, and that's what it is.
And do you grind for leveling the concrete after connection?
Go ahead, Bernie.
Yes, that is something that we have considered up front in when we're doing these, like the one that I have here shown on the page here. That's a 9-inch slab that we're showing here, but that was the intent, is that we'd come back in and we'd grind it a little bit to have that.
Yeah, that's a common practice. A great answer. Again, we have a couple of questions about cost. You already talked about cost, but what is the range of cost of ABC dollar per square foot?
So on that, I think that was something that's a great question, but I don't know that we have that broken out in our bridge costs right now. We don't track ABC cost per square foot versus regular construction. I will say that it's still relatively low in Texas, and that's because of our standardization. That's a big part of it. But we don't have that broken out right now.
Jamal, we'll be
Okay.
able to answer that question a whole lot better in like 12 months after we've got this new policy in place.
Yes, I agree. Another one about cost, and that's based on TxDOT average low bids. They say if the precast option of the contractor elected the precast option instead of the cast in place, there would be a bid item that you include in the documents for to get kind of an average of cost for ABC. So the question is here is how you guys do it in Texas at TxDOT to come up with the average low bid if the precast option is used instead of cast in place.
Yeah, that is a great question as well, and I would say that we don't have a separate bid item for that. That would actually be great if we did, because that'd make the data side of things for us much better. But we don't have that right now.
And that's good. That's really hard to do. Again, another question came in during the presentation. Does lifting ABC elements into place present a major safety hazard compared to cast in place construction?
I don't think so. No, I don't think it's a safety hazard at all. And you know, Bernie showed that one note that we kind of highlighted. We want to make sure the contractors see what our plan is. We really do everything we can to make sure the contractors have all the information they need, including the size of these pieces and the weight. So we think a lot about where are they going to be able to put cranes? What size cranes are they going to need? Is this going to be a double pick? Is it going to be a single pick? So I don't think it's a safety hazard at all, because we really work very closely with the contractors and make sure they have all the information they need so that there's no surprises. And we also really keep it in mind the size of the pieces. We try not to make them any longer than they need to be. And we try not to make them any heavier than they have to be.
That's great. There's a question about, and this came from the industry, I guess. They say tons of precast shown in the presentation. They say why TxDOT does not require precast plans to be PCI certified producers.
We've got our own certification process, and we do so much precast in Texas, and it's because we've got everything we need in the ground all over the place. So we're able to produce very, very high quality precast for very, very low cost. But with the amount of reliance we have on precast, we've got our own certification process. We've got numerous full-time staff whose only job it is working with precast concrete. So certainly we look at what PCI does. We consider PCI to be a great partner, but this is one where we just think it's important for us to have our own process, because we are precast. To say we're precast heavy is really an understatement.
That's correct. You guys are one of the leaders in precast concrete in the nation. This is a question about post-tensioning. They said, do you have an example where you use post-tensioning for ABC? Let's say putting the segments together by using post-tensioning.
We do a lot of post-tensioning, but you know, post-tensioning, hopefully I don't make anybody mad here, but that's something that tends to slow the process down, not speed it up. So there are many applications where post-tensioning is appropriate, but in ABC applications, we do everything we can to minimize those processes that take a lot of time in the field. And you know, PT can be time consuming.
That's correct. Post-tensioning does take time to tension and grout after erecting segments and using closure pour. There is a question on does the contractor required to be approved to do precast elements, and if so, what is the procedure for approval?
it's onerous, and that is on purpose. So it's in our spec, it's in our standard spec. Kind of going back to a couple answers ago, we are very, very reliant on precast, but in that reliance, we want very, very, very high quality. So it's no joke to get approved to be able to produce precast for the state, and that's one of the reasons why we don't see much cast on site. It's because it is really difficult to get that approval. So you can go to our standard construction spec and see what the process is. Again, we've got full-time people whose job essentially it is approving and watching over these plants. So it's really tough to get approval, and that's very much on purpose.
And there is a follow-up question on precasting again. Are deck panels casted on site by the contractor, and if so, what is the quality control required? I think that's a follow-up of your question.
The panels are also fabricated in precast plants and delivered. There's a couple of plants that just mass produce those things, just crank them out. Millions of several million square feet of deck panels a year. So those are also made in the precast plants.
Okay. Last question. Do you do segmental bridges for long spans in Texas?
Go ahead, Bernie.
I would say that's definitely an option. We have a number of segmental bridges across the state and in various areas of the state. Yes, we do, but that we consider multiple other superstructure types as well. But in times where that makes sense, that is what we use.
Great. I have all the questions. You guys answered all the questions that came in during the presentation. If I might ask one question myself, you showed slide 29 for the column to the cap connection. Do you use a cavity for the connection?
That's a good question. So here we didn't. Now we do. That was what we show here is really hard, right? To thread the needle. And so that was some pretty immediate feedback we got from contractors that we need a cavity. And so now what we use corrugated metal. And so it's a big old tube. It's super easy to set in place. It also eliminated the need to do grout. It allows for cast in place concrete. So it just the connection we have now on our standard, I think, is much easier than what we started with, where we were kind of having to thread the needle and then grout it. Now it's just a big old corrugated metal tube. You set that sucker in place and fill it with concrete.
Great. That's a great, in fact, advancement of this peer cap connections. That's all I have, Bernie and Graham. You guys did a great job. It's great to hear from the owner perspective. Back to you, Mary Lou.
Thank you very much, Graham and Bernie, for sharing your ABC prioritization efforts in Texas. You really moved Texas forward with ABC since I've been there. So great job. And thank you for your thoughtful responses in the Q&A session also. We appreciate your sharing this. Texas is a big state, and we're very interested in what you do. So thank you very much. Thanks also to Paul and Jamal for moderating the Q&A session, to Ollie for managing the web room, and to all participants for your interest, attendance, and your great questions. Those were good questions, and they helped clarify what Texas is doing. So thank you. We look forward to your participation with us again for our next monthly webinar on Thursday, August the 17th. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you.